So on this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we're joined by another awesome guest. She's a star of Stargate Universe, the originals, Orphan Black, Ready or Not, which is one of my favourite movies, and most recently Quantum Leap. It's Elyse Levesque. Elyse, welcome to the show, my love.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm really excited because not only have I spent many, many years following your career and enjoying your work, but you've got an awesome movie coming out with a fellow UK resident. Well, I don't know if he's a resident now. He's probably moved on to LA or Canada. Jonathan Rhys Meyers. So I cannot wait to watch it. But before we talk about Disquiet, which looks awesome, by the way, by the trailer, I wanted to find out a bit about you, really. I mean, why acting and why not like a 9-to-5 profession and not something that's so competitive?
This is the only thing I'm good at. And
Get out of here.
I mean, from a young age, I think the only other thing I had any interest in being was a marine biologist. Like I loved animals I still do love animals, but yeah, when I was very little, I think before I started acting, I wanted to either be a vet or a marine biologist. And then when I was in grade 6, my teacher, Miss Krause, shout out Miss Krause, she came up to me one day after school and said that there was an open casting call for a children's television series that was shooting in my hometown. And she felt like I should go and audition. I think because I was just always sort of a natural performer. I gravitated toward me performing in front of the class and that sort of thing. So I went. I dragged my mom to this open call. And they didn't even make me act. They just asked me questions. And one of them was, I can remember, it was like, if you could go on a date with anyone, who would it be and where would you go? And I said, Leonardo DiCaprio, and we would go to McDonald's, obviously. And she was like, you're hired.
Wow.
And so I started acting when I was like 11.
Wow, that easy at that age, that must have been awesome. Thank goodness she didn't say someone else than Leonardo. But
it was like the Titanic era. He was
exactly.
You
won't go to the local pool with him. That's all I'm going to say. McDonald's is probably a safer option. So when starting out in the industry, do you or did you have a plan in place of what you wanted to achieve, or your end goal as such?
I mean, I wish I could say that it was some grand goal. I just wanted to be a working actor. I just wanted to be able to pay my bills doing what I love to do, which I feel like is a success in and of itself because it's so difficult to make a living at this, in this industry. So that was sort of the original intention. And I was pretty lucky that I made a move to Vancouver when I was 20. And I remember at the time I got a transfer with a clothing store that I worked at called Le Chateau. And I was working at this mall in downtown Vancouver. And I was having a really difficult time juggling the auditions. This was back before the pandemic when you'd have to go to do in-person auditions. And you finish work at 10 after cleaning up the store. And by the time I took the bus to where I was staying, it was 11. And if I had an early audition the next day, I was just not good at learning words that quickly or reading things directly off the page. So I was showing up to these auditions and just not killing it. And so I remember I asked my parents if they would help me out for 2 months, just let me focus solely on acting for 2 months. And if I didn't book a job in that period of time, I would get a part-time job again. And luckily I got a job maybe a couple weeks later, and then I got another one. And then I think I got one more. And I just, of course there's been huge windows of nothing, but for the most part, I've been lucky to work consistently since then.
I mean, I can only imagine in the industry there's lots of ups and downs, and as you just mentioned, there is spaces with nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you keep motivated and moving forwards during these times? And like, if you didn't get a job, and you didn't get that part, I mean, how do you pick yourself up and keep going forwards?
Yeah, I mean, apart from the occasional meltdown, I do a lot of meditation. No, I truly think that the in between work is some of the is part of the difficulty of what we do. It's staying
Mm,
sane and trusting that you're going to work again, because it
mm,
always feels, you hear it and it sounds so cliche. Actors be like, once I finished that job, I thought that was the last time I was ever going to work. It's this weird psychological game we play with ourselves. And I don't think anyone is immune from it, no matter how successful you are. I
mm.
think you're always questioning, am I hireable? Am I going to ever work again? And it certainly can be dire when you go, I think I went a year after my last job, before I booked Disquiet. I went a
Mm.
full year of not working and coming close on the occasional thing, which sort of keeps you hungry and feeling like you're,
Yeah.
in the game. But it can be really difficult. And I think as I've gotten older, I've started to realize that to enjoy those downtimes, because they are temporary. And then, of course, you inevitably get so busy that you just wish you had nothing but time on your spare hands. Classic. um, but I try my best to usually, especially before the pandemic, I think I was better at filling my time. I
Mm.
would be in a class quite often, studying, which would help make you feel sort of fulfilled artistically, even if you weren't getting auditions or weren't working. But now I've started to still do other things that are creative, like writing some scripts with friends, reading plays, sort of taking the initiative to be
Mm.
creative without somebody giving me permission to do so.
But this is a wonderful thing about the pandemic as well. I know it's strange to say wonderful thing about the pandemic, but it's that time when a lot of people weren't working and you had that
Mhm.
spare time, that the amount of, creative thoughts that have come out of that time, and people sitting down and actually collecting their thoughts and putting it on paper, and the projects that must be coming our way from that time,
Mhm.
is going to be incredible. But let's talk auditions, because I've had many guests that literally love them, hate them, and they are an artwork in themselves. Like, doing auditions. Which side of the fence do you
Mm.
sit on? Do you like them or hate them?
Oh gosh. Uh, a combo. I miss them now that we don't have them anymore. So
Mm,
that's interesting. But for the longest time, I've never really considered myself great at auditioning. I get very nervous, and that gets in the way. Sometimes it can help, like if it's an
mm,
emotional scene, or so you're like running for your life, which is always such a fun audition to have to get, where it's like an action sequence, and you're like, how am I supposed to do this in this tiny weird space, with no props? Anyway, I what I do miss, though, like self-taping is great. And I used to always prefer it because I felt like I could relax more. I
mm,
could be more in control of what I sent out. Read with someone that I felt comfortable with, go as many times as I need to until I get up to a place where I'm satisfied. But I think the downfall of self-tapes is you don't get that immediate feedback. And so
mm,
you could be missing out on the potential to get closer to what they're looking for with the casting director's help, with the director, etc. um, and also, just like, I think it can become easy to get a bit lax with it,
mm,
because you're like, well, my buddy so and so is going to come over and help me, and like I'll just like casually set up these lights. Or whereas when you have to go to an audition, it's like it's a ritual for me
mm.
anyway. It always was, of like, making sure I have enough time to get there before the drive over there, listening to always like the same songs that like get me in a certain state of mind, nervously looking at the sides in your car before you get out. And as sometimes painful as those situations were, I do miss the thrill of that sort of performance element, I
Mm.
guess. not knowing how it's going to go.
I mean, what's been the best and the worst audition that you've had?
Well, it's funny because I can certainly think of the worst. Like that jumps out immediately. I'm like, the best? I don't know. I've had some auditions that, you know, you leave the room and you're so high from the experience. Something sort of magical happened where you forgot that you were acting. I've had that happen a few times. I really enjoyed my callback for Orphan Black. I put myself on tape for it. I was in New York at the time, and then I had to pop up to Toronto to do press for a show that was coming out. And I got the phone call like, oh, hey, you have this callback tomorrow for Orphan Black. And I was, you know, and they gave me extra scenes and stuff. And I didn't have a ton of time to look at them. But it was one of the few times where I feel like I really gave myself permission to not have everything figured out. And they were so open to that it was just a really fun experience. And I left there just so jazzed, and got, I think, a phone call maybe like an hour and a half later. Actually, no. Oh, wow. I remember I was staying at my friend's place who was in the show, and I walked out of her apartment, and there was a van in front of the apartment, and this guy's like, get in the van, you're going to the table read. And I was like, wait, what? So that was a pretty overwhelming, crazy experience. And then, like, I mean, I've had a number of stinkers, like bad, brutal auditions. But the one that jumps out at me was, it was my first commercial audition in Los Angeles. And just even before I went into the room, the energy in the waiting area was just very intense. There was a lot of people. Everyone got partnered up with someone. And then the guy who was casting this commercial, I think, clearly hated his job. Like, he did not like being a commercial casting director. I don't know, maybe he had bigger aspirations. I don't know. But he would come out of the room and he would yell at people. He'd be like, so-and-so and so-and-so, why aren't you in the room? I called your name 5 seconds ago. People would be like, oh, okay, sorry. And I was like, what's happening? And so then finally he came out and he called myself and some other guy who I was partnered with. And we came into the room, and a bunch of other people sort of came in, and I was panicking going, are all these people going to be in here while I do this audition? Like, this is my worst nightmare. I don't want them to see me fail at this. And anyways, he told us what to do. And he was like, okay, so when I call action, ladies, and I don't know why, but for some reason, none of you can seem to get this right. Wait 2 seconds and then look into camera and say the line, blah, blah, blah. So immediately, as soon as he was like making the ladies feel stupid, I was like, I hate this guy. I was like, I hate this guy. I just want to get out of this thing. Anyway, everyone left. So me and the guy sat down, and before that though, he made us do a slate. And I was standing next to the guy I was doing the scene with. He said his name, height, etc. And then the camera panned over to me, and this dude goes, wow, you're very attractive. And I went, oh, thank you. Like, I did like a weird face. And then he went, actually, maybe not.
Wow.
like he was such a jerk. Wow. And I was so worked up. I was so angry that by the time he was like, action, I was like, 1, 2. And then I like looked in the camera and I said the line, and he stopped me and he was like, okay, Elyse, whatever it is you're doing, it's creepy. Can you not do it like that? It was terrible. I left there. And my mom had just gotten to LA. She was visiting, and I remember I had to go. She was waiting around the corner for me. And so I met her at this coffee shop, and I was like, I quit. I hate this. This guy was such a jerk.
So are all casting directors or assistants that horrible, or is the industry,
no.
You know, because I mean, how old was you at that audition? Was you quite young?
I would say I was 28. I was 28. Okay. So I've been doing it for a while. I've never experienced anything like that. I've certainly experienced people who aren't warm. You know, or you come in and the casting person while you're reading is like on their phone. It's very distracting. But I think
Wow.
for the most part, they want you to win. They want you to come in there.
Mm.
They want you to kill it. They want to create an environment that facilitates that. But just every so often, there's someone who's just, I don't know, having a bad day or having a bad life. I can't be sure. But
Bless you. And this is why, literally, I couldn't be in that industry, because I'm the type of person, I take things too personally, because I'm just apparently too nice. And if someone's horrible, I take it so personally. And obviously, the industry, I've been told, is very fickle at times, and you've got to have quite a big skin. So, what's been the biggest obstacle that you've had to face to date within the industry to get to where you are now?
gosh, I don't know. Probably my own stuff. I don't even think it's like, I mean, sure, of course, sometimes it feels like everyone else holds the key to you working, but I think it's my own being too nice, I think. And I do think it's really hard, because I actually think a lot of people in this industry are extremely sensitive. I think you have to have that sort of softness to your heart in order to be vulnerable and empathetic. And but the industry itself is a business, and it can be really difficult to separate those two things, to separate the art from the business side of things, and to take things really personally. I mean, that's something that I still struggle with. I think I've gotten better at it, but caring what people think, trying to learn to not care what people think, I think is a lifelong goal for me. So yeah, that's probably it, is sort of standing up for who I am as an artist and as a woman in the business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's about standing up for yourself, self-worth, and now I've got two small girls. I think I've noticed it more about the empowerment of females within the industry, and why we should applaud, more female-led roles, strong roles, because I want my girls to grow up and have people like that on TV to look up to. So talking about kids, I mean, you started at such a young age, at the age of 11, and we all know kids change their minds so often, it's unbelievable. So what has been the driving force from such a young age for you to keep within the industry and not change your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have moments where I've been like, am I sure I want to keep going? And I think I do check in with myself from time to time and go, is this still what I want? And I love a lot of things, but there is something so fantastic about getting to be on a film set, or on stage. The communal aspect of it, the collaboration, I just love everything about it. I love the getting up early, the sort of nervous excitement, the uncertainty of how the day's going to go, the sort of intense family like bonding that you form on sets. You're together for this short amount of time, and it's always an intense amount of time. And so you form these really immediate, sometimes lasting friendships with people, because it's kind of like you're in the trenches together, and getting to sort of play make believe and do things, learn new things. That's one thing too that I love about it. I feel like with every character, I learn something new. Sometimes it can be like, I learned to fly fish for one job. I learned to throw knives for another one. I started learning a bit of German for a job that I did sort of at the end of last year. And so I feel like it keeps me alive and curious. And as much as I bemoan the sort of inconsistency of it, I do think that is part of the appeal, that you can't really predict it, that it's not predictable.
do you know what? Fly fishing and throwing knives have never been in the same sentence at all. So for me, I'm just astonished by that. So you won't be getting into any random vans anymore with those skills. So I mean,
Totally.
At what point did you think, you know what? I'm actually good at what I do. Have you got to that point, or, because I know some actors will say, I'm still trying to discover that. I mean, do you believe in yourself as this actor, and that you recognise that you're actually really good because you are, from a fan point of view?
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I feel like no, I have moments where I'm like, oh, I think I understand acting. I think I've solved it. And then I'll go to do a self tape, or I'll have one bad day on set and I'm like, I'm trash. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why anyone ever hired me. I don't know why these people believe in me. I am terrible. And maybe there's some sadistic part of me and us collectively, because I think a lot of actors have this, that likes to be hard on ourselves. I don't know. It's almost like maybe if I'm hard on myself before you are, then you can't hurt me. Maybe that kind of thing. Let's get deep. Let's get real deep about it.
It's like therapy with Be More Super.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, is it like a lot of people? Is it the imposter syndrome? A lot of actors have, and I suppose, I suppose that when you know that everyone's watching you on screen and the critics, you see, I'm the type of person, I watch something and I always see the good in it. Do you know what I mean? And when you read these critics and they're ripping things apart, it's like literally they're only there to basically put this project down, or film or TV show down. But then they never focus on the writing or the acting, or, So I suppose as an actor, it can be quite daunting to think that you're going to put all these months of work for some person to pull it apart. I just you've got such a job on your hands, and I commend that, because I couldn't do it. So this is why I'm doing this, you see, because I don't care what people say. They can say anything they want. I'm creating content, they're not. But I mean, what goes into becoming a successful actor in the industry? Is there a magic sauce? Is there a magic word that people can say to become a successful actor?
Well, I think obviously talent, sort of goes without saying, but I don't think it's as simple as that. I think there's a lot of really talented people who can't find their footing in the industry. I know I have friends who, gave up at a certain point, and they were immensely talented and should have had big careers, but for whatever reason, things didn't line up. And the only thing that I can really think of is just hard work. I really think having a good work ethic goes a long way. I think things have changed in the industry. You can create your own content, speaking of, now, and build a platform for yourself if other people aren't giving you the opportunity. Whereas that wasn't so easy back when I started acting. So I think having a really strong work ethic, I think being a person people want to have around goes a long way. I know there's a lot of like rotten eggs and stuff in this business, but I also know there's a lot of really good people, and those people who show up and make it a pleasant work environment, they work. People want them around. So I think talent alone isn't enough. And the other sort of thing that I think is important, and something that I've had to really learn, is to know what kind of things you want to work on, and to be comfortable saying no. I think there's always this fear. I certainly know that I deal with it, where you're afraid that if I say no to this, that there's not going to be another opportunity, that thing that you're really looking for to do next isn't going to come. But I've got a lot of people around me who are brave enough to say no to things that don't align with what they want to do with their careers. And inevitably, that thing that's better for them and for their career always shows up.
Yeah. No, that's solid advice, really is. And obviously you're doing something right, because your IMDb credits are just amazing, going from Smallville right up, I think Cedar Grove, is it? I haven't seen that.
Cedar Cove. Well, that's okay.
Cedar Cove.
Probably not your vibe.
What is, you never know. I'm a modern man. I like Virgin River. I like all shows like that. Yeah, I love Virgin River. Okay. Honestly.
Well, you might
and
give Cedar Cove a try.
Yeah, you know what? I will. It's just that, do you know what frustrates me at times is that you see all this content and all these movies and TV shows, and a lot of them are not available, like in the UK. They're only available in the States. And I know it's all down to licensing, but it would just be nice to get more Hallmark sort of stuff over in the UK, because they do some really good movies. They do some really good shows. But maybe we'll get more over here in the UK across the pond. But let's talk about your latest project, which is Disquiet, which I'm going to bring up the poster here. The trailer is immense. It really is. I'm not sure if I'm going to watch this, with a pillow in front of me. But if you could tell if you could tell all the viewers and listeners a bit about the movie and whom you play.
So the movie follows this character named Sam, who's played by Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, who wakes up in an abandoned hospital after a near fatal car accident. And he wakes up in this sort of apocalyptic hellscape where these very dark, sinister forces are trying to trap him and keep him there. So his whole sort of mission is to get out of this never-ending maze of terror. And along the way, he meets my character, Monica, who is somebody else who woke up in this hospital and finds herself in a world that is scary and unknown. And all of these people that Sam meets along the way, like him, are essentially facing their own demons in this place. So for my character, Monica, she is obsessed with perfection, and she goes into the hospital to get a breast augmentation. And she's obsessed with changing her face and body to look and fit her ideal of perfection. And basically the thing that is haunting her in this place, I don't know if I want to say exactly what it is, but it is a reflection of that thing, of that desperate need for perfection.
And it looks terrifying. It really does. People don't like hospitals the best of times, but in this movie, definitely, I wouldn't want to visit that hospital. But what attracted you to this project? Because it always fascinates me how people choose roles. And what attracted you to the role of Monica?
Well, so interesting. I this wasn't so much of a choice. I auditioned for it. I put myself on tape for it. And I had a really, really good time taping it with my friend Hanneke. There was just something about her that I was able to lock into. And then they asked me to tape it again with some notes, and they said, can you bump up the comedy? Which I was like, okay. I thought it was a horror. Okay, let's see what I can do with that. And I found just this real sort of, I think on the page it could be easy to play her as caricature. And I didn't want to do that because she's very much like a valley girl sort of persona, and I wanted to ground her and make her someone that we could relate to. So I thought that would be a really interesting challenge, and it just felt like a real opportunity to play a character, which I hadn't done in a while.
I
And so
mean,
then, yeah, so then they offered it to me, and I was like, yes, I'll do it.
yeah, you're thinking a year. No, excellent. Bless you. And, it looks fantastic. It's coming out on the 10th of February, so it's in a couple of days.
Yep.
And it's going to be on digital and on demand as well. I mean, you act opposite Jonathan in it. How was it starring on screen with our very own Jonathan?
I mean, well, I was a fan before I met him. It's like, there's only been like a handful of times where I've worked with someone where I'm super familiar with their body of work. But like, I loved Johnny from like Velvet Goldmine have you ever seen that?
No.
One of my, oh, it's so great. It's so great. Ewan McGregor, Toni Collette, Christian Bale, and Johnny. And it's like a David Bowie, Iggy Pop sort of.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Anyway, so I was a big fan. I watched all of the Tudors, so I was very nervous to meet Johnny. And he's he takes his job very seriously. And for the first several days was completely in character, even between takes. Like he introduced himself, but he sort of like, kept to himself, and between takes really stayed in character and didn't engage too much outside of the scene. But then at one point, I think it was like 4 days into shooting with him, we were doing this scene where my character wakes up basically nude in this hospital, and I have like a wrap, like a medical sheet around me. And then at one point we're running from stuff, and I'm trying to put clothes on while I'm running down the hallway, and he was ahead of me. And when he turned and looked back, I guess I just looked really ridiculous. And so he broke character, and he started laughing hysterically at me. And then at that point, we sort of became like buds, and we were just, making jokes between setups and finding levity, because it was also dark, and we were shooting in an abandoned asylum called Riverview. Outside of Vancouver. So it was just like it was a very intense sort of environment. And obviously the script was intense, and what we all had to do was very intense. So it was nice to get some laughs in between.
Wow. Do you know what? I'm just thinking, an abandoned asylum that you're filming this, that must be scary enough as it is. I mean,
yeah. Crazy stories in that place. Like they film so much stuff there, and people have crazy stories.
I mean, I used to live in like this apartment, so this building got converted to luxury like flats, apartments, and unknown to me is that this building used to be a mental asylum in the 1800s. And then one day when I was leaving the apartment to go to work, the groundkeeper said, are you new? I said, yeah. He said, oh, do you want to see something really cool? And I was like, yeah, okay. And underneath in the basement, they still had the morgue, and they still had these holes where they used to dip people into the water. Literally, I moved out within 3 weeks. I literally got my deposit back, and I was out of there. It freaked me the hell out. So filming in an abandoned asylum must have been scary enough as it is. I mean, obviously it's quite tense. The characters, in the trailer. So my question is, as an actor, so when they cut shoot, you were saying that Jonathan obviously stayed in character. I mean, how do you get away from your characters when you finish shooting? Do you have like a ritual that you go through to sort of cleanse yourself from all those emotions?
No. Like a glass of wine, maybe like a strong martini. I mean, I haven't really been one of those actors who takes it with me. I tend to sort of be able to, not always, but like I'm not to the extreme of, I've worked with some people who they can be like laughing and making jokes, and the director calls action and they are like laser focused on what's going on. I can't quite do that. But I think generally speaking, I can at least leave what I did, or the character, elements of the character at work, and go home and sort of live my life. But there's moments when if a lot is being demanded of me emotionally, specifically, where I feel like I really need to sort of stay focused. And it can be really difficult on a film set because, especially, weeks into filming where there's like a lot of camaraderie going on, the hours are late, everyone's tired and getting kind of punchy. It can be really easy to just, be cracking jokes, like I was saying, between takes, and then you get really far from the thing and they're like, action, and you're like, oh God, where are we? What are we doing? So that can be like a hard line to toe. But no, for me, I tend to just sort of try to be there in the moment and then let whatever transpires sort of stay there.
And then obviously for the viewers, I mean, what are they in for with this movie? What can they expect to experience without obviously spoiling anything?
I mean, this movie does not let up. It doesn't even, a lot of horror movies, thrillers, it's a slow burn. Not with this movie. We hit you over the head right out of the gate and we don't stop. There's no rest for the viewer in this film. So buckle up. It's a very intense ride.
I mean, I've read one of the critics, things on this movie, and it does say it's fast-paced all the way through, and it doesn't let up, which I will probably definitely have that pillow and a glass of red wine ready at the side. So the last few questions for you, Elyse. So your credits on IMDb are breathtaking. They really are. You've got so many on there. So have you got a labour of love that will always stay with you amongst all those credits?
Well, there's a number of have to say that Ready or Not is just for overall experience, it was so just, I knew from the moment I read the script that it was going to be something special. And then when I got to Toronto and, met the rest of the cast, Christian Brune, he was hired, and then Andie McDowell, who I'd worked with on Cedar Cove, was also in the cast. So that was a really fun. It was just nice to show up to a job where I knew some people. I am such a fan of Fox Searchlight and the films that they put out. So that was really thrilling and exciting. And then we were just, it was a relatively quick shoot. I think only maybe 4 weeks. But we got to do so many ridiculous things, and we laughed so much. And the directors, Matt and Tyler, were just so wonderful. They created such a good environment. And Samara, who was the lead, was just one of the best number ones I've ever worked with. She really set the tone for a playful, fun set. And it was just really cool. It's just fun to show up and be excited about what you're going to film that day. That's not always the case.
I mean, it was such a fun movie to watch. Me and the wife, we just absolutely loved it, and it's one of our favorite movies. It really, really is. And then looking back over your career, having started so young, if you could go back in time to your 11-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give her to prepare her for what you've experienced?
Don't listen to the haters. Just block them out. It's just a waste of your time. I think when we're little, I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. When we're young, our view of the world is so myopic, and things won't feel so big later in life. And just joining the circus was one of the best things I think I did for myself. I always felt like an outsider growing up in the city that I grew up in. I was bullied a lot as a kid. And so to join this place where being different, and by circus I mean like the industry, or acting, the art of acting, and the people that it sort of pulls into it, it really allows you, and it actually encourages you to be unique. And so, I'm grateful that I pursued that avenue that allows me to sort of be who I am and express that through all of these different people that I get to play.
Definitely. And actually, you could join the circus with your knife throwing skills. So, you know, I'm still hanging on to that. I'm like, it's just amazing. Fly fishing, knife throwing. And I always end all my interviews with the same question, which is, if your life was a movie, what title would it have?
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Yeah, there you go. That's a really good title. That, or like, what just happened? That, I think, would also be a good title for my movie, if my life was a movie. Yeah.
The memoirs of getting into a random van. Yeah. At the beginning, but Elyse, you've been a great guest. I cannot wait for Disquiet to come out in a couple of days, on February the 10th. But keep safe and stay super.
Thank you.